Hello, everybody. Hi. It's Connection Point Conversation Wednesday. I'm really excited to be here today. This is going to be really a lot of fun. Today's is going to be a topic on happiness. Now, like lots of people talk about it, is kind of that elusive idea out there, but it's a real thing. And I've got some really interesting things to share with you. So, of course, when it was Frankie, she's going to join us in a little while. Some of you met her on our creative talk. She's the one who said to me, sorry, there was a message. She was why don't we do something fun? Let's talk about happiness. And so I sent some information out to everybody, and I asked 3 questions. So I do have some answers from that. Now, right at the beginning, I thought it would be really nice to say, to let you all know that if you want to write your answers in the message, please do. If there's somebody who actually wants to come on and share, please just ask to be invited in. So anyway, this is really fun. So when Frankie suggested this great topic, what I decided to do was to do some of my own research. So I got my tea. So I really had a little bit of fun with it. And I got out a book, The Happiness Project, and I started to look at it by Gretchen Rubin. It's been really fun to go over it again. I'm going to read the whole thing again, although I'm right at the beginning. But happiness is a really interesting topic. I mean, at the end of the day, I've made a few notes, so I'm going to go over those. But it's something that for thousands of years, right since the beginning of time, Aristotle, Plato, all the way up to Benjamin Franklin, and all the new people who are studying what is it that means we'll be happy. So what I did love was I found a sentence in Gretchen's book that says, levels of happiness, from studies, genetics accounts for about 50%. Life circumstances such as age, gender, authenticity, marital status, income, health, occupation, and religious affiliation account for about 10 to 20%. And the remainder, and this is what I really believe, is a product of how a person thinks. So we all maybe have heard, maybe you haven't, but it's what you think. So we've all met people that have a more negative way of looking at things. And then we know people that automatically see things in a positive light. And there's positive psychologists like Shawn Achor, who's done huge amounts of studies on happiness. This, book by Gretchen. It's really an interesting topic. So, and even from my own personal experience, I would suggest that I got my 50% of happiness, really, belief in a benevolent, culture, as it were, or benevolent world. It comes from my dad. Absolutely, 100%. Happiest man on the planet. And no matter what was going on, he always had this sense of calm acceptance, and maybe that's a lot of it too, is acceptance. My mom, so not. She was really unhappy no matter what was going on. So it is really interesting how you can get, sides from other, from your parents as well. And then also, I really do believe it comes down to what it is you think and your perspective. And those are the things that we can change to create more happiness. So that's kind of neat that we can actually change that. We're lucky we can do that. And as human beings, we can, say, well, I can reframe what it is that I'm thinking. And of course, the pandemic has brought huge amounts of stuff up about things like this for a lot of people. So that's why we're going to hear from all of you today, I hope, on what it is that you create, what it is you do to create some happiness for yourself, and how do you know when you've got it. Now, it was Louis Armstrong who said, somebody asked him a question and said, what is jazz? He says, well, if you have to ask the question, you don't know what it is. Well, it's kind of the same thing about happiness. It's kind of, you don't really know, but once you actually feel it, you know it. So it's something you feel, kind of like love. It's a little hard to explain, but you'll know it when you feel it. And I think that that's the fun part about all of this, is that we can talk about it. Everyone's been doing it since the beginning of time. We actually can create more happiness for ourselves. And I think that's a really fun thing. The other thing I just want to be really clear about is the opposite of happiness is unhappiness. It's not depression. Those are completely different things. And that's why with happiness, we can create that. Sean Aker has done some great studies on how to increase happiness. And we'll talk more about those as we go on, because I want to invite the people that are going to join us. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read you out the questions that I wrote, so that, if you want to answer them, you can. Now, the one other thing I wanted to just mention at the beginning is happiness for me is just something that I know can fluctuate, and I'm aware of it, but it also has a lot to do with some really essential things, I think, that are important. And that's probably why I feel happy most of the time, is I do believe that living with the feeling of hope, hopefulness, definitely makes me feel happier, whatever that is. And then the other thing, and this is a big topic, and it's not a political topic in terms of, it's freedom. And when I say freedom, I'm not talking about my rights and my freedoms in a political sense. I'm talking about the freedom to make choices. Now, a lot of our freedoms to make certain choices have really been compromised during the pandemic. I'm not free to fly and travel as I'd like to. There are certain choices that I make around that. So the difference is that I make choices. I reframe that. I'm choosing not to travel. I have a choice about that, because I'm honoring and valuing other people's safety and health. So it's a question of how you talk to yourself, what it is that you're saying. And I just think that that's really important. Anyway, so I want to invite my co-host, Frankie Watt. She's going to be joining us. Now, some of you met her before on the creative topic, and she is a great source of joy for me. She brings me happiness all the time. So while she's joining, I'm going to just read you the questions that I had written to everybody. So, simple question: what brings you joy? Now, it's been interesting. There's quite some, there's some commonalities actually in some of all these answers, which has really been fun. So it kind of means, that we're kind of human. So, what brings you joy? And I'm going to read some of the answers because they're really brilliant. The other is, how do you create joy when times are not ideal, especially now during such a challenging pandemic year fraught with stresses, fears, and uncertainty? So I've written that. And then it's nice to see you all joining. Hello, everybody. And lastly, what is the first thing you're going to do once all this is over that's going to bring you a lot of happiness that you're kind of missing? So I've got some answers for that. I hope you join. We're going to have Frankie join right now. And happiness and what it means to her, because she and I, like I'm sure so many of you, have been having to create joy in our own lives. Hello, Frankie Watt. Nice to see you. So, because we've actually talked so much about this in terms of, well, what creates happiness for ourselves? How are we going to do it in a really difficult time? So it was Frankie's idea to do this today. So we're going to want to hear from you, and please type in your answers. So those were the questions. What brings you joy? How do you create joy when times are not ideal? And what is the first thing you're going to do once all this pandemic?
Hang on, you're going to be in slide.
So we were talking today about all this kind of, and hello, Roger.
Hi there, how you doing?
Good. I guess I could ask you those three questions. What brings you joy, Mr. Watt?
Okay, far away.
Pardon?
Far away.
What brings you joy?
Oh, wow. How long have you got?
I bet it's many things for all of us. But if you think,
Yes.
how do you know when you're happy?
I don't know. It's an unconditional thing, isn't it? I've never believed in this thing saying, well, happiness is a choice. I think there are too many factors that come into play with making you feel happy or not, and it's your ability to deal with those factors. I mean, I know there are people who are happy all the time, and I'm quite envious of those people. But I tend to I always tend to see the bigger picture, and I think I settle for contentment over happiness. But I think the pure joy is like being able to cuddle the grandkids.
Yeah.
That's unadulterated joy.
Absolutely.
Being out in the mountains, I love.
All those good terpenes out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
it does wonders, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, and of course now, you know, with the pandemic, I think we're a lot more aware of the things that actually make us happy, because a lot of them have been removed from us. And so I think we're adjusting our values as to what's really important and what isn't, you know, in these times when we've got more time to ourselves to think about them.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I think it's highlighted a lot of all that. So what's the first thing, I think I know the answer to this for you, Roger. What is the first thing you're going to do once all this is over?
The same as you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably be on the same plane.
Right. Absolutely. Look how England, here I come. And
Yeah, but it's going to be difficult. I just heard on the news today that the UK has got the highest number of deaths per capita of any country in the world.
oh, that's really sad to hear.
That's really sad. But on the other side,
Yeah.
they're really putting a bomb under getting the vaccine out there, which sadly we're not.
You know what? I would agree with that. They're actually really going gung ho on a lot of all of that. It's been for a lot of all my friends and relatives over there for sure. Well, thanks for sharing, Raj.
Yeah, Mike is getting his shot tomorrow.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we're very happy about that.
Yeah, too. Yeah, there's a little controversy over that over here in Canada, but anyway, I think
Just a bit.
well. Congratulations. That is good news. I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
so Frankie, what?
Hi, honey.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah.
So you are probably one of maybe the most content, happy people I know. You bring me joy every time I talk to you.
Bit of buttering up going on here.
And I think one of the things that makes us, I think it's interesting because we have this synergy. We love to laugh, don't we? And I know that laughing really brings a huge amount of happiness. It changes how my brain is. It changes my state, my mood almost immediately. And I don't really know how we do that, but we do. So
well, I think it's important not to take life too seriously, really.
too
when
important.
You think about it. When you think about it, who was it? Somebody once said life is just one long dash from cradle to grave under heavy fire.
Quentin Crisp.
And that is true. You know, you have to kind of just take it easy, and yes, if you don't achieve everything, it doesn't matter. And if you don't if you keep striving and you're always wanting the next thing, or you're always waiting for something to happen,
yeah, exactly,
life can go by in a state of waiting. And with
respect, I think that you're able to say that from a point of view of having achieved. And I know a lot of people, no names, no pack drill, who are still striving to achieve and feel fulfilled. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Frankie has achieved as a mother, as a grandmother, as an artist, and achieved on a lot of very important levels, which really sort of fulfill, you know, the soul. But there are people out there who are maybe getting on a bit and who think that they're not really going to fulfill that. They're not going to get that fulfillment, and that's what drives them all the time. And that's a double-edged sword. It's good because you keep moving forward, but it's bad because, you know, something's eating away at you all the time.
Yeah.
Well, then again, I guess that's about your perspective, what it is that you're thinking about it. So that's where we do have the ability to reframe that kind of feeling. But what it sounds like you're saying, Roger, is that feeling that you've achieved and doing something meaningful is important to your happiness.
Totally, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
But having said that, the famous British comedian Peter Cook once said in an interview, "I can't think of anything worse than fulfilling my potential."
No, then what would be next?
Well, that's he was always looking, you know, fulfilling your potential means that you do that, you put your feet up, and
that's the end of it,
and then sink slowly in the west.
Yeah, wouldn't work for me at all either. No, I get that. That's pretty wise, actually, when you think about it.
Yes.
I know that's pretty wise. Yeah, I get that. So it's interesting. So I did hear, you know, from a few people, and it is interesting how the piece about connection is really huge. Connection, um, friends, things like that. So I'll read you these answers because they're really good, and then comment.
Okay.
So, what brings you joy? Friends. Literally don't know where I would be without them. Well, that's about that connection and communication and sense of belonging. Don't you think so, Franks? I think that
Yes.
feeling
Yeah.
belong.
Yes.
Yes, kind of like that. The basic tribal feeling is a sense of belonging. So I think that's a deep need for humans. So I totally related to that one.
Yes.
It's interesting because this is Flora, and she's been on the call before as well. With her anxiety, confidently anxious, and she says the evenings really bring me joy. Isn't that interesting? Being able to relax after a long day, quiet time, reflection. I prefer to keep my evenings open for me. That creates happiness for her. Well, I guess that kind of ties to doing good self-care, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Quite often that's the absolute polar opposite of me.
Which is what?
Well, I've since I've been living on my own, I've found the evenings some of the hardest things to deal with, because that's when I feel furthest away from home, and all my and just home, which isn't here for me. It's back in the UK, and in the evenings, when you're on your own, you have time to think. You have too much time to think about that.
It's exactly the opposite of what she's saying, but it is about the same thing. She feels that that's when she's really connected and really disconnected, and so that's really important. Hello, Flora. I'm just going over all your answers. Anyway, so she says, how do you create joy when times are not ideal? So because I said, especially during a challenging time like this last year, with stresses, fears, and uncertainty. It's hard for people to live with fear and uncertainty. That kind of is the opposite of feeling happy. And she says, well, I practice gratitude and keep a perspective. So here again, she's actually talking about like what Sean Aker does in all his studies, is that you can actually practice gratitude. And the more gratitude you actually practice, then the happier you actually feel. You can give yourself almost a timeline. And if you do gratitude for 10 minutes, it's going to give you 8 hours of happiness. It's really an interesting science.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep perspective. So that's again about what you think. And so what it is. So she says, ultimately, compared to many, I'm extremely fortunate. So it's nice to know a young person who actually feels like that. And I'm very proud of her for saying that. The little things. And I'm like that. I know you are too, Frankie. Don't always expect to wait for the big magical moments. And this is such good advice. Thank you, Flora. Just share your dog, a positive conversation with someone, a positive connection with someone is, a good cup of tea.
Yes.
Just live in the moment, enjoy each stepping stone. Well, we get huge. Oh, we all have our tea. This is a tea and it's our tea and talk. And lockdown can be stressful, so it's hard to kind of reach all these things. We have to help ourselves maybe get through that.
Yes.
Yes. Interestingly, Mia, since the lockdown, I felt a lot easier being on my own, a heck of a lot easier having the time, being on my own, because I felt that there are so many more millions of people who are now in the same position, because a lot of the time you can think it's only you.
Only you, yeah.
It's only me who's going through this. And now we know that there are millions and millions of people who are going through it.
Yeah.
And somehow you feel sorry for those people, but it does give you some kind of comfort. I think there's a heck of a lot in knowing you're not alone to help you get through things.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's a thought. Of course it is that knowing in a way that we're all kind of in the same boat, and having empathy for others and compassion for ourselves during that takes away a lot of that stress. It's just knowing we're all in the same boat. We're you know, on a global scale, we're all in the same boat. And
Yeah.
that's kind of reassuring. Absolutely.
Yes.
And so, okay, so then the last question, I hope some of you are also going to join in and answer some of these, although I'm having trouble seeing all your answers here. What is the first thing you're going to do once this is over? Well, it's interesting that Roger, Frankie, yeah, safety numbers, you're right.
Well,
she says traveling, seeing the world brings me incomparable joy. And doesn't it for so many of us? And I'm wondering about that specifically, what it is that I mean, we're all nomadic. I get that since the beginning of time. What was it? Brahma man? No. But she says, I can't wait to get on the road.
Yeah.
Right.
I know the truth.
Yeah.
However, she says, I'm also going to take more joy in all the things I took for granted that were taken away from this year.
Yeah.
Visits, hugs. Oh, I really relate to that.
I know. I think that's going to be huge for so many.
Yeah.
Seeing the grandchildren again for me.
Yeah.
Hugging.
Can't wait.
I know. I haven't seen one of my granddaughters, who's 3.5 now, since 2019 Christmas. And that's not to be able to see them.
And they're growing so fast. So you know you're missing when you don't see them for that length of time. And yeah.
Visits, hugs, meals out. Yeah, I'd love to go for dinner.
Meals out, yeah.
So cinema, of course. Theater, all of it. And
yes.
And it's interesting. Isn't this interesting? Flora, I didn't know that about you. She says, I didn't even think I liked physical contact. She probably means also that she didn't know if she needed it, but I do miss it.
Right. Yes.
Because maybe in a way, it's like what you were saying, Flora, is you took it for granted. And maybe that's just what I know I took all that for granted. When did we ever think on this planet that, you know, at any time we'd not be able to hug people?
Yes.
Like,
yeah. True.
Go out of my realm of awareness or consciousness that it's talking to you. So,
yes.
And it'll be grateful to have it back and make the most of life, make up for the lost year. Oh, that's so true, Flora. Thank you so much for sharing that. And a lot of said the same thing, that they really felt that it's the connection that makes them happy. And then that makes them realize that we're just an island, are we?
Yes.
That connection is essential to our mental health.
It is. Well, we're beings who live in communities. We're social. We're not isolated by nature. We need each other. So having that taken away is huge for sure. Yeah. I mean, we're lucky actually now. When you think back to people in pandemics in the past, they didn't have this ability to even do what we're doing. You know, doing what we're doing now with Zoom or FaceTime, and so in a way, even though we don't see people, actually doing this is great because you are connected, you are staying connected, and actually seeing people in real time. I was reading through some of my grandmother's letters to my father when he was stationed out in North Africa in the war, and catching up on news that was weeks old, you know, and that really brought it home to me how people were really isolated from each other. You didn't know what was going on necessarily back at home straight away or with your friends and loved ones. So we're actually lucky in that for sure this day and age.
We really are. Like, I mean, well, you know, I think we're incredibly lucky to be able to do this. That's one of the reasons I wanted to start this, is because I wanted to connect with others and
yes, exactly.
How we were all feeling, because at the end of the day, we're all feeling beings. So, and happiness can seem like a really odd concept in a lot of ways. Well, what do you mean? What's happiness? You know, and it is interesting because even though things are difficult, I don't feel unhappy.
No.
There's definitely been some gifts. And I think part of it too is that there seems to be more of an awareness of, I feel more connected in a lot of ways, even though we're disconnected. And like what, you know, is being said here, and it's brought us closer, global humans, as global citizens. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic, round about March, April, there was and I'm sure I was not alone, but I got loads and loads of communications from people that I'd hardly been in touch with for ages, and it reopened a lot of lines of communication. Everyone checking up that everyone was okay.
Yes.
You know, now that's kind of gone off a little bit now as we've got used to it. But I used to get Lawrence phoning me up every morning to see if I was okay. He doesn't anymore. You know, but that's all right.
You're fine. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. So Frankie, now yesterday I felt completely happy.
Yes.
Because I got to connect with you and spend time with you outdoors, even though we were walking. It was
sunny.
It was a beautiful day.
Sunshine makes a huge difference, doesn't it, to everybody's mood?
It really does. And that's something important to know about, that light and sunshine, and you know, that sad is a real thing.
It is. And
it changes again. So if you ever feel down, which isn't very often, I know, but you change what you say to yourself, because often we do it with each other. So because you even the other day said something to me about, you reframed it automatically. I was saying something, I don't know, I might have been sounding negative about something, and you automatically reframed it. What? Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, I can think about that differently. I mean, have you noticed that you actually do that, or no?
Not consciously, no. I wouldn't say I'd sit and consciously do that. Yeah. But I think you can always think of things that could be worse. I mean, most of the time, whatever situation you're in, it could be worse. And I think that I mean, obviously there are situations on the planet and in the world where people are having terrible, you know, dire circumstances. In many ways, we're lucky. Whatever we're going through, we're still lucky in many ways, more than a lot of people on this earth. So really, I think keeping things in perspective is really good. Yeah.
It is how a lot of like what the Happiness Project was saying. This was the book I was
right.
It when she said that 50% is part of our makeup, and that's interesting. I think it comes down to some questions, like a little bit esoteric questions. But do you believe in a benevolent, you know, universe, or do you do you believe in the opposite? Well, that kind of also can be naturally how you're born, in terms of a positive way to see the world or a negative to see the world.
True.
And
yes,
that just automatically come from that negative side.
Yes.
And what my hope is, what I'd like to believe, is that people can then go, well, wait a minute, but I have a choice about how I want to think about that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people understand, but what you're actually thinking, whether it's conscious or not, and that's why it's important to actually bring your thinking up into your forefront, is if you're not conscious of it, it's actually leading how you feel. So you don't have a feeling first. You have a thought first. It actually goes into the brain first, whether it's conscious or not. And then we have our feelings or our mood. So really what we're thinking is essential. I mean, I think you would agree with that. Right?
Yes, no, I definitely agree with that. And yeah, I think one of the things for me is that I'd say, I don't know, I kind of feel that it's okay to be sad sometimes too. It's actually okay to not feel okay. You know, you can kind of roll with that for a while. It's unrealistic to think that you're going to be permanently in a state of happiness and joy. 100% of the time. Things go wrong in your life. Things are, you know, stuff happens. It happens to everybody. So you've got to be realistic in that and think, well, you know what, this time will pass. This actually isn't going to last forever. This pandemic isn't going to last forever. Everybody, you know, by the good grace of God, we're all still here. You know, we're doing okay, basically, and we will get through this. And if we don't get through it, we will still manage somehow. And really, you want to think about that life is actually basically quite short in some ways, and the joy that you leave behind on the planet when you are gone is probably going to be more lasting than if you were a miserable person. Everybody looks back on and thinks, oh, they were miserable and didn't cause happiness. So you kind of have a duty to the people around you, to your friends, to your family, to your children, to the next generation. Be happy, look for the best, you know, and just roll with the bad times. I don't know that you can do more than that.
I think it's you know, I totally agree with all that, totally. But sometimes it's very hard, and I go back again. It's hard when you're living on your own and you're not used to living on your own, and it isn't your preferred way of living.
Well, I think I agree with you. I've known that being single and separated from all of the people that I love and care about, but then again, down to connection. What is it about being connected to the people that we love that creates that sense of happiness? So again, and you're right, the pandemic has completely compromised that for so many people. And as Frankie says, I always daily say to myself, this too shall pass. However, it's not always easy. And like Flora says, you don't want to hold in, and what you're saying too is, you don't want to hold in the feelings, our human feelings of loss and sadness about things that happen. It's more that there's an acceptance, I think, that this too shall pass, that is going to pass. And honestly, I had a good cry, you know. And Flora was saying the same thing, and it's detoxifying. It gets rid of the sadness and the loss that we all can feel. We feel disconnected to others, and it really comes down to, you know, I'd love to hear, has anybody else got, you know, some feedback they'd like to, you know, throw in here about your answers to questions. You know, what brings you joy? How do you create it? And I'm saying joy like we're, you know, like a Jack Russell running across after. I'm fine. Jack Russell had a lot of joy for that. You know, but that basic sense of everything's okay and happiness. Now, at the end, in a few minutes, I'd actually want to save some time to do a little exercise about happiness and joy and how you can actually hang on to that when you maybe don't necessarily feel it, or get yourself back. Yeah, so I want to save some time in a few minutes just to make sure we do that, because it was really an impactful exercise that I did, a coaching exercise once. Yeah, good. So we'll do that. But anybody else, do you want to answer the question? How do you know when you feel happy? It's a really good one. What brings you joy? How do you create joy when times are not ideal? What is the first thing you're going to do once the pandemic is over? Some of you must have some ideas about what you're going to do in the answers to those questions. But if you don't want to, that's I think a lot of it has, from what I can see, from what people have been saying, bringing it all together, a lot of it has to do with that human connection and how important that sense of belonging is.
Absolutely. Yes.
And, Roger, it is a lot more difficult when you're single and on your own to find that sense of belonging. Yeah. Where do you belong when you're on your own and you're not allowed to see people, and that's not really very much fun. But I do think that that's probably one of the foundational theories of happiness. Yeah. Belonging, and hence you do get, groups of people coming together.
Absolutely.
Makes them happy.
Yeah. Yes.
Or whether it's this group or that group. So here's one.
Yes.
Oh, sweetie.
My Nana. Oh.
Yeah, the thing I'm most looking forward to seeing my Nana.
Oh.
Well, are really looking forward to seeing all of you as well. Oh,
that's wonderful.
Yeah, John, that's really nice. Thank you for saying that. So, that's really very sweet. I like that makes my Nana heart feel really good.
Oh,
yeah. Hold it together, Mia. Hold it together.
Well, I have 2 grandchildren. Some of you know, some of you don't. I have 4 in total. The 3.5-year-old I haven't been able to see, but I actually am really blessed to live with my 18-month-old.
Yes. Yeah.
So if I get to see her even for a brief hug, I just think, oh my God.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I know. But my 2 older ones, they're teenagers, and of course they're in school, and they're 15.
Yes.
So
yes.
And there's that that loss of that lack of connection. I'm sure they're not missing me at their age. However, their Nana is missing them, because again, it's that connection. It's about our tribe. It's about that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Oh, and
yeah.
Anyway, you've gone fuzzy for but I hope your internet will come back. You've just gone really fuzzy, but that's okay. We can still hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You've got kind of a fuzziness going on, but that's
oh, right. Okay. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, she had too much to drink last night.
that's oh, that's funny. Anyway,
but the other thing, Leah, the other thing which I think is it really helps to sustain us in these times is, you know, and this is where I think that we artists are very, very lucky in that you know, the art is, you know, is a passion that is an intrinsic part of our lives, and we can indulge that to an even greater degree than we were beforehand. And that is it's very nurturing. I mean, people say, oh, my art, it's a joy and everything. It isn't really. I mean, if it is, you're not being serious enough about it. But the struggle about in trying to push yourself forward all the time, that's a wonderful weapon in your armory of dealing with the disconnection that we have.
So being creative is actually something that's really a value to people who are being creative.
Yeah, because you feel that you're making the most of your God-given talents.
Yeah.
You know, we all need to feel that, and doing something meaningful. You know, and it's another way of communicating, of course.
Well, I like what you're saying. Like so. And Frankie, you and I talked a lot about this in the one we did that was about creativity.
Yes,
is that's it's a soul purpose, and that creates an incredible, just being creative.
Yes,
gives you, I know it does you, a big sense of happiness, and it does for me as well. Whether I'm being originally a florist, if I'm going to make flowers or do a flower arrangement, or I'm going to do anything that bring me an incredible, it does kind of bring me joy, not just happiness, but it really does bring me a lot of joy, sure, the creative part. But what's interesting is, so then my question to else is, if you don't have an outlet, what is it that brings me to your day? And I think that because now you're clear. And because if creativity is such a foundational part of happiness for a lot of people, if people, we're all creating, and we've already decided that we've learned that everybody's creative in a different way,
in their own way. Yes,
not call yourself an artist or a florist or you don't say this. What is it that creates meaning for people?
Yes.
And I think that's a pretty interesting thing, is a big question. What is it that creates meaning for people?
Yes.
I'd like to know the answer to that. Come on, you guys, answer some questions for me. Everybody the answer. We all learn from each other. It's really important, because I don't know the answer to that for everybody, because everyone's different.
Everybody is different, and there's all sorts of sort of little things that people do that they get completely involved in. Like, I was reading something about someone who's got this massive stamp collection, and complete obsession, just finding stamps. And then there was somebody else I was listening to who collects buttons, and has got buttons that go back to sort of the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, or when they used to, I mean, really amazing collection of buttons. And it's kind of these things, but you can see how that finding those things and collating them and collecting them is so, gives so much joy and happiness, and really,
and I agree with you. Like, I think maybe that a hobby that people have, because they're kind of passionate about their hobbies. You wouldn't do a hobby unless you were passionate about it.
Exactly.
And the absorption in that, okay, Dom's answering again. Thank you, Dom. I really appreciate this. Because growing and learning always provides meaning. Now, I love that. Setting goals, small or big, and going for those, that's meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Can Okay, I like that. That's very good. Can be good for them. So
Yes.
in a way, that whether you take on a hobby or you take on something to learn. Now you've been doing of learning while the pandemic's been on. You're always going, you should join this, Mia. You should join this. And she's right. I get
yeah, absolutely.
That's a really good point. Learning, engaging your brain, other things to think about other than yourself as well.
Yes. Yes.
You're learning outside of yourself, whether it's creative or whether it's intellectual or whatever. You are engaging your brain. So, and you've done more of that, which is interesting during the pandemic as well. So what's made you go for that?
Well, I think having the time to concentrate on it, I guess, because usually throughout the year, a normal year, I would be doing a lot more traveling, as you know, and this time of year, especially, I'd be heading off to Ontario right now. So, so having that free space, I guess, more time to do it means that you think, okay, I'm not doing that this year, so I'm going to turn to what I can do. And so for me, the writing's always been sort of there for me. It's just I haven't got the time to really concentrate on this. But now it seems like actually I have got a bit of time, so I should do it, because this time isn't going to last forever either. So get on with it, and yeah.
There's definitely been a gift then, pandemic.
In that sense, yes. And
no, I get.
But in sense, yes. Okay, turn your attention to what you can do, because there's a million things that you can do, whilst you can't do the thing that you would be doing, I guess. Sorry, I've got a cough.
But it's funny, I think the pandemic has hit people I know in two different ways. Some people, it's really galvanized them into really doing, doing new things and really making the most of other things they wanted to do. And other people, they've been hit by just procrastination, it's been rather like being the rabbit in the headlights, that they're faced with all this time and they can't actually get around. There's a barrier that prevents them from really getting stuck into clearing out that box room, going through that cupboard and clearing all the stuff out, which they've always said, oh, I'll get round to that when I have time. And then all of a sudden they've got the time, but there's a mental barrier between, to actually getting in and doing it. But that's what it seems. It seems that people are, for me anyway, the people I'm, that I'm in contact with, they seem to fall into one camp or the other.
No, I can understand that. I think there's been times where I've definitely the same thing, where I felt kind of a lack of inertia and desire to do anything, and I procrastinating, and then this great surge. Well, wait, time to do this, and I have to admit that when I've changed my perspective and made myself do something, I've definitely felt more happy. That's for sure. It's definitely helped my happiness quotient. Yeah, which is really quite interesting, because and I think that what Roger is really true is it can impact us all very differently, the pandemic. And when you were saying, Frankie, it reminded me that, of course, oh my God, we all rush around. I mean, imagine when we had kids and we were working.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, am I happy? It was constant. And look back on that now and I think, well, I'm actually really did feel happy.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, but I wasn't happy. Things didn't always go right. Things were difficult. Happened, but essentially I felt happy that, and grateful for what I had and all of that stuff. But it was really been good about all this, because I think happiness is such a fascinating, and to even thinking that, that human beings have been thinking about, well, what is happiness for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yes.
You can read about happiness in Plato and Aristotle and, all the way on. And it is kind of interesting that now we have modern day studying the science of it. And it's a pretty interesting topic.
Yes.
But there's a distinction between feeling happy and feeling and getting joy from specific events. Now, over the past few years, I've got, absolute joy from from certain events, like, you know, seeing the grandkids and all this kind of thing, and getting to Scotland and climbing and all those kind of things. But overall, does that make me a happy person? And the answer is no, it doesn't. You know, contentment, you know, I'd settle for contentment if I could get it. But there are very happy events, but that doesn't add up to being a happy person. You know, you really value those events, but I don't, you know, but there's a distinction there, I think.
Well, I think what's interesting is I would probably agree with you. Is Roger a happy person? I go, oh, sure. But I think the question for you, Roger, is what is it that would make your life happier?
No, I mean, there are certain things that you think, well, I don't think it's something that you could write out a checklist and think, oh, if I got this and this and this, and I'd got this, and I won the lottery and everything, I'd be a happy person. I don't think that follows. I think it's a state of mind. I think it's who you're with. And I don't think it's that easy. I don't think there's a formula for it. I don't think you can go down to London Drugs and buy something for it.
Of course not. And it actually says that. But what's interesting is that Frankie and I were discussing exactly the concept in Gretchen's book, which was that we're born 50% positive, you know, in a way, with that attitude. And I think what you're saying is really important. Contentment is really key.
Yes.
And then you know, then there's the other 50% that are kind of born a little bit on the more positive side of things. So I think that's pretty interesting. So yes. Because we're going to end up with a few minutes. I don't want to run out of time, because I just really love this in terms of, it is a complex issue. It is a lot to do with connection, where we feel we belong. I mean, even Gabor Mate talks about addictions, talks about it's all about disconnection. Somehow we're disconnected to faith, we're disconnected to ourselves, we're disconnected to others, that causes those unfortunate, you know, strategies people are using to try to make themselves feel happy and not feel unhappy. But there is kind of a science behind it in terms of what it is that you think. And so I just know that I'm hoping that most of you have at least one time that you can really tap into. So that's what we're going to do. And then if there's any other questions, please, you know, put some questions there. So everybody, you can close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to close your eyes if you don't want to. It's totally okay. So I just want to think about a time when you really knew the world was 100%. You were in that perfect moment. Maybe it was not an identifiable feeling, but you just knew that everything was right. There was a rightness to it. So can you tap into that a little bit? Can you just close your eyes and feel it? Where did you feel that moment? Where did you feel the world was perfect? It smelled great. You were with the right person, or you were by. What was that like? Where were you? Can you tap into that moment where everything came together? I know when yours was. But I think I want you all to really try to remember a moment. You don't have to tell me what it is, but try to remember a specific moment. Was there a breeze? Were you indoors? Were you outdoors? What did it smell like? What did it feel like? Was it warm? Was it cold? What were you doing? Who was with you? I think these are really, I can think of a perfect moment. So I have my perfect moment. Your perfect moment. Frankie, do you have your perfect moment?
I do have my perfect moment.
Oh, good. Okay. Now, the next part of the thing is I want you to take that moment. I know you can all feel it. You can feel it in your body. So that's the essence of happiness. That's the essence of knowing that the world is right. You're content. There's a contentness to it. So now I want you to think of a metaphor for that moment. I'll share you mine when we're done. What is your metaphor? Think of a metaphor, something that describes it perfectly. Something that you can smell, something that you can look at, that has that encapsulates that moment and that feeling. I'm wondering if anybody's got one. Do that. think of that. What does it feel like? What is it? Can you smell it? Try to think about that. What's a metaphor? Because this metaphor you can think of. I can actually smell my metaphor in this moment. I actually can feel how warm it is. I'm going to tell you what it is in a minute. And when I think of that, I can actually go and get this particular thing because it's actually a physical metaphor for me. And the moment I think about this metaphor, I can feel that moment. Now, the reason I have my metaphor is because it's incredibly fragrant, it's incredibly warm, and I feel like I'm giving myself something really special when I drink it. So for me, Frankie's going to laugh, because I always make her go to Cafe Artigiano, is chai latte. That's my for my perfect moment. Now, that is not my perfect moment. My perfect moment, I believe, well, it was the day I got married. And that perfect moment of my people around me, my family around me, that moment of love and acceptance and that experience brought me so much joy in that moment. And it was perfection to me. So it was a warm day. I could smell all the flowers outdoors. So my chai latte brings back that moment of complete peacefulness and love and that moment in my life. So that's why I'm always saying to Frankie when I go, I used to live, like, I need to go for a chai latte. But I can about that chai latte and it brings that sense of peacefulness. So
right.
That's my experience. I want
That's
to
wonderful.
Have you guys got any more metaphors for your special moment? So Frankie, did you come up with a metaphor for your special moment?
My special moment. Well, I think my special moment was when the children were born.
Absolutely.
Just feeling just completely content. Like they were born, they were there, especially when you've been through a long labor. You know, it's like, yay!
Yes.
And they're there in your arms for the first time. It's just the most wonderful thing. And I guess my metaphor, it's not really like yours because it's not so tangible, but I would say it's like being surrounded by a big warm bubble of love. And I say that to the grandchildren sometimes. I say, imagine that you are sitting in a bubble that's just full of love, surrounding you and holding you and supporting you. And it's invisible, but it's there and it's always there. And so that would be my metaphor.
That's a wonderful metaphor because it encapsulates, it surrounds you in that feeling of when the children were born. I think I was too exhausted for that to be at that 30 hours of labor. Yeah, maybe the quick ones. Yeah, that was pretty useful. But that's a wonderful one. And of course, yeah, maybe I'm going to think about a second metaphor for when I had the easy ones.
I feel my events, my ultimate moments of happiness are exactly the same. And I think that one of the things about it is however much there are a lot of things like a wedding, you can plan it, you can choose people, but with the birth, you can't plan that. Okay, it's going to happen, but you don't know how, you don't know when, and nothing can prepare you. I think the thing about that, nothing can prepare you for that. You can see people having weddings and all this, all family and everything like that, but you can't prepare yourself for a birth, for the feelings you get for a birth. You just can't do that, and that's why it's all the more incredible. It's, my metaphor, it's like trying to, looking into a bright light and it's so wonderful, but you can't really work it out.
It's the most magical, amazing, euphoric moment in the world, isn't it? Yeah. So what was your metaphor for that, Roger?
Well, it was like looking into the bright sunshine, and which means that it's wonderful and it's warm, but you can't really see it, and you can't really figure it out. But exactly. It's wonderful for reasons you can't fathom.
Oh, well, that's really lovely. Well, thank you for sharing them, guys. Well, we're almost coming to the end, and of course, we have to end on time, or get cut off, and we don't want. So, I mean, I would have loved to have heard some of your metaphors, you guys. But thank you for joining. I hope you know, some of the concepts we talked about in terms of, you know, if you're not feeling, you know, happy, well, you know, where are you feeling disconnected? So what's the opposite of that? Where do you need to, you know, find that sense of belonging? Pretty important part. Where can you up your practice gratitude and your perspective, change how you think about things? Those are really important as well. And as Sean Aker always says, if you do 10 minutes of gratitude in the morning in a journal, you're at 8 hours of happiness for the day. And that Friday feeling.
Right.
I love it. That's a good one. The Friday feeling. Friday, yay! Friday. That's awesome. Well said, girly. Anyway, so I really
Fridays come round too quickly in the pandemic. They're here before you know them, which is a good and a bad thing.
But I like what Flora is saying. She says you get that aha feeling, you embody that day. So that's a really good one. That you know, the thing. That's a really good one. Hang on.
Yeah.
Because sense of freedom and your own time and all the things that fun, connect with people you love, all the things that make people happy. So there's lots of ways when you're feeling unhappy to try to think about things differently, and so on and so on. And also I would really recommend the Happiness Project. In fact, I'm going to read it all. And yes, and absolutely. Oh, I love this. People saying all the things they like to do on a Friday, that Friday thing. So we're coming to the end. I don't want to be cut off, but if anybody wants to know more about meaning, belonging, the things that do create happiness, as all of us on the globe do, and what we're experiencing now, if you need any support and a little bit of love, then make sure you reach out, DM me or whatever, and talk. But I want to say thank you very much to Frankie Watt for being with this great and brilliant idea of discussing happiness, because there is a science behind it. And of course, as a counselor, I always go to the science of things. But, you know, you can create more happiness in your life. And oh, thank you, Flora. Thank
you, Flora.
Thank you for answering the questions. Yes, goodbye. Thank you all so much. Loved, you know, everybody being here. And Roger, thank you for the surprise visit.
It's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. It's good to see you.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'll hug you when I can.
Bye.
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 Goodbye, sweeties.